Hey guys, it's Erica Galinas with the Mike McCaddy team at Century 21 Affiliated in Cherville, Indiana. I'm here for this week's Ask the Agent. I actually had a very dear friend at the show ask me to talk about some of the differences between renting and buying, particularly financial, but I've identified basically the three big things that come up in this debate. Obviously, there's been millions of internet pages written about renting versus buying and pros and cons lists and all kinds of things. I think for me, because I think it's the big three things, but B, also to make sure this video isn't, 17 hours long. The big three things I've identified are lifestyle issues. Everybody has a different kind of life. Everybody wants different things out of it, and that can affect whether you rent or buy. One of them is money. Duh. That's kind of what most of the articles and everything you hear about focus on. Money is a big part of it, but it's not the only part, but we'll talk about the money part. And then the psychology. There are cultural expectations about renting versus owning and all kinds of things. I want to talk a little bit about that as well, because I think it's probably one of the biggest things that make it an uncertainty. I mean, if we could just do a checklist and it's about money and it's about some practicalities, this wouldn't even be a debate. But there are psychological things that go into renting versus buying, and I want to talk about those as well. So the first thing, lifestyle. So the big one is flexibility versus stability. And not that being a renter means you have no stability. I mean, people rent for years and years. But the whole idea that if you have a rental someplace, I mean, the longest contract you're going to have is like 12 months. So if you decide in 12 months you hate the neighborhood, you hate the area, you want to move to California, something like that, lease ends, you can do whatever you want. It's something month to month. I mean, you could be like, hey, at the end of the month, I'm leaving. Bye. You could do whatever you want. And that's obviously great, for people just kind of nomadic, people who are just figuring out what they want out of stuff. It's also good for people that do a lot of job transfers, or military families rent a lot because they have the flexibility to basically just pick up and go. Homeownership, on the other hand, less flexible because obviously if you own a house, you have to sell it in order to get money out of it, in order to buy another house somewhere else. That can take time. That usually costs money if you've only lived in the house a couple years. So for people who are settled where they want to go, they want some stability in their lifestyle, buying a house is probably the way to go. I didn't know noise versus privacy. I guess you could put it that way. Obviously, buying and renting situations can be different. You can rent a house in the middle of nowhere. You can, buy a condo among 800 condos. So, we'll do broad strokes. How about that? Generally, when you rent, particularly if you rent in a big apartment complex or an 8-flat or something like that, you are at the mercy of your neighbors, in addition to your landlord. They might be noisy. They might be uptight. They may not want you to walk around during the day because they work nights and you're too loud. They may have giant, loud music parties every night of the week or shoot fireworks off the balcony. Those things you can't really control for in a rental, and there's always the danger that even if your neighbors are perfect today, they're going to be lousy tomorrow because, again, they're nomadic. They just moved away, and your landlord fills it with some other jerk. When you buy a house, you can take the time to look at the neighborhood. Drive by at night, drive by during the day, drive by on a weekend, kind of see what the neighborhood is like. So you have some more control over what your neighbors like. Obviously, jerky neighbors can exist anywhere, but the other big advantage about purchasing a home, again, not necessarily a condo, but purchasing a home, is that your neighbors are usually, any number of feet away. So if you want to play loud music, or they're going to play loud music, unless it's totally out of control, everybody's happy. It's not a problem. So depending on, those kinds of issues, if you're more a private person, that might be something that you want. So updating your house versus maintaining a house. So if you live in a rental, you can't do a whole lot. I mean, sometimes your landlord will let you paint, or, certainly there's like removable wallpaper and you get some awesome rugs or whatever, but you can't really do things like replace the flooring. So if you got carpet, you're stuck with carpet. You obviously can't do things like switch from a regular hot water heater to a tankless hot water heater, because your landlord clearly is not going to let you do that, even if it's energy efficient. There's little things. Some places don't let you put holes in the walls. There's issues with pets, those kinds of things. Obviously, if you've purchased a house, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you got the money and you stay within, the town restrictions for your property. That's not super important to everybody. So, because the other hand of that, you don't have to maintain it. And not the money part of it. We're going to talk about that next. But just the time it takes. I mean, mowing the lawn takes time, and you got to buy a lawnmower. Ripping up all the flooring and replacing it, who cares? You like the rug. It doesn't even matter. Those things might not be important to you. So some of the downsides for that kind of control of a rental may not matter to you because it takes time to maintain the rest of it. You know what I mean? You can paint your walls, but you still got to take the time to paint them. So that's one of the decisions that, based on your personal preference, may sway you one side or the other. And then the other thing, I put this under lifestyle. It's kind of general, but depending on what you want to do with your time. If you are a homebody, that kind of thing, most houses that you're going to buy are going to be in subdivisions. So there's probably a park, and maybe it's close to a library or something like that, but they're in subdivisions. And you have neighbors on, both sides of you, and there's cul-de-sac, and you can take walks and everything like that. But you're kind of far away from, the action, for lack of a better word. I mean, most people who live in a subdivision can't walk to the pub on Friday night because the pub is 10 or 15-minute drive away. On the other hand, most properties in a downtown kind of area, not just like downtown Chicago, but like downtown Crown Point, those are all rentals. So that may be something that's very important to you. I mean, depending on your lifestyle, whether you have kids or not, you may want to be closer to the things that make up your time. And in a lot of cases, the rentals are close to the things and the purchases are a car ride away. We don't have a lot of walkability around here. They're not designing these neighborhoods for that. So if that's something that's important to you, rent. Find like cute downtown Valpo, downtown Chicago, depending on your budget, whatever it is. Be close to the action, but that's usually mean you're going to rent. So again, that's one of the lifestyle things you kind of have to decide, what you prefer. So the big one that, more ink has been spilled over this topic than any other, money. Should I rent or should I buy? And some people are like, well, you're giving a landlord equity, and other people are like, nah. So here's the basic issues that I have identified financially between renting versus buying. So the first one is, just real quick, a mortgage payment. So if you have a mortgage payment, your landlord has a mortgage payment. Generally, it's split into 4 parts. We call it PITI. It's principal and interest on the loan, and then it's real estate taxes and insurance on the building. So given that, the big argument you always hear in terms of buying a house is that, well, you get tax deductions for buying a house. You totally get tax deductions for buying a house. However, it's not that simple. So those 4 parts, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Interest on your loan and real estate taxes can be a tax deduction. Obviously, consult your accountant, etc. But basically, for most people, those things can be deducted on your taxes. But 2 things recently changed in the tax law. One is that the deduction is now capped. So if you have, I don't know what it is offhand, but like a $600,000 house, your deduction is capped. Doesn't matter how much you spent on taxes and insurance. So that's something to keep in mind. The other part of that is most of us do not have $600,000 houses. So the amount we deduct isn't, a couple $1,000 or something like that. Your standard deduction in most cases, a lot of cases I'll say, is capped. So, 2018 when I did my taxes was the first year I'd done this, but because the standard deduction that everybody gets is higher than my deduction for real estate taxes and interest, I didn't use it. So basically it was just went to pay that, which is fine, and the deduction didn't matter. So if somebody's giving you pressure to buy a house because of all these tax deductions, you don't necessarily, again, consult your tax accountant, but don't necessarily listen to it because it's not like there's some huge money you're going to be saving there. On the other hand, obviously, you're paying your rent every month. Your landlord has whatever he or she has to pay. Either way, if you rent or buy, you're going to be making a monthly payment. Your rental payment is going to pay the landlords, if they have a mortgage, principal, insurance, taxes, and interest on their loan. So they're taking the deduction. So, depending on how you feel about that, depending on, rental rates or your taxes, that may be something that you want to look at. What that leads into, obviously, is the equity question. This is the other big one you get, and this one is 100% accurate. So if you pay rent to your landlord, even if they have a 30-year mortgage on their rental property, they are having their mortgage paid off by your rental payments. They are keeping whatever equity they are building in that house, not just from mortgage payments, but from, property values rising. So if they bought a house 20 years ago, their mortgage is almost paid off. Also, the market is now up by like 27%. You have not you've been paying every month, you get no share of that at all. The landlord pockets it, which I'm totally fine with, but that is the reality. Landlords, the other thing they do, they're going to price at the top of the market. I got an email the other day from a client who was like, I'm not sure I can relocate to your area because the rents are so expensive. Yeah, absolutely. The landlord's going to charge top of the market rent, as they well should. I'm all for it. I mean, there's some situations that are a little weird, but yeah, they're landlords. They're going to try to maximize that. No matter what their mortgage payment is, they're going to charge what the market bears. In addition, your rent will go up. For me, this is one of the biggest factors financially. You're going to get a 15-year mortgage. You're going to get a 30-year mortgage. You are going to get a fixed interest rate. Do not get an adjustable rate mortgage ever. But so you're going to get a fixed interest rate. Your housing payment will be substantially the same forever until it's paid off, and then you have no payments at all. Real estate taxes can go up, and your escrow will change a little bit, but I mean that's usually a handful of dollars a month, not too much to worry about. But as your market changes and your landlord realizes he can rent this out for another $100, $200, $500, he will raise your rent. And if you can't afford it, he's gonna or she's gonna be like, sucks to be you. I'm raising the rent because this is what the market will bear. If you have a mortgage payment, your monthly payment amount does not change in any substantial way. So the other thing that touched on it, like the maintenance thing we talked about, when you rent, you can basically depend on your landlord to perform the maintenance. Not every landlord's the same. There's certainly some jerks. I'm sure we all have a story about some idiot landlord that we've heard about. But in general, legally and contractually, the landlord is required to fix certain things. So, if you live in a place and the window's stuck, you're going to fix the window. But if the hot water heater goes out, you make a phone call, your landlord shows up, takes care of everything. You don't have to do the work. You don't have to buy the hot water heater. You're in good shape. If you buy a house, all of those things now fall on your savings account, basically. Most of the things that go wrong with a house are expensive. Hot water heaters, your furnace, your roof, all kinds of things. So if you want to buy and buy into the advantages of buying, also make sure you got a couple grand in a savings account or something like that, because if something breaks that has to be fixed right away, probably going to be expensive. The other thing, obviously, is you can spend some time watching YouTube videos and fixing things yourself, which is awesome, and I totally think you should do that. But time is worth something, and that's, if you're doing it yourself, you are spending time on that instead of doing other things you might enjoy more. So one of the ways a rental obviously has its biggest advantage is that the landlord is responsible for fixing things. If your landlord's not fixing things, that's a different story. Depending on how bad it is, you can talk to a lawyer. But in general, something breaks, I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to go work. I'm going to call landlord. By the time I get home, it's going to be fixed, and it didn't cost me anything. So that is obviously one of the biggest advantages of having a rental. The money part, I know there's been so much written about it. It is pretty simple. It's the keeping your equity versus giving your landlord the equity. It is, the cost of owning a house versus the cost of having somebody else own it and fixing it. And then the big one, like I said, for me, is the fact your rent's going to go up. It doesn't matter what happens, your rent is going up. If it goes down, also not good news, because that means something's very wrong with the neighborhood. Something's going on there, because landlords never cut rent unless they're desperate to people to move in, and there's either something very wrong with the house or something very wrong with the neighborhood if you can't find somebody to rent your place at, a prevailing market rate, let's put it that way. So, the next one, the psychology, is for me one of the biggest things, and I think it is what makes people, freak out and worry about the decision so much. So culturally, as Americans, the American dream, you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to get a job and you're supposed to save some money and then you're supposed to buy a house, because that's the American dream. That's not everybody's American dream. If you don't want to buy a house, don't. Go through the things we talked about already, the lifestyle choices, pros and cons. Go through the money part of it. I mean, money is involved, but you're not necessarily, just wasting millions of dollars. I mean, it could just be a matter of, $100 a month or something like that. There's all kinds of things. And if your lifestyle, like I said, living near stuff downtown, being able to be nomadic and flexible in terms of when you can move, all kinds of different things. If those things are the most important things to you, you need to rent. It doesn't matter what somebody tells you about tax deductions, and it doesn't matter so much about what somebody tells you about equity or something like that. As long as you are happy with the situation you're living in, that's where you want to be, buying or renting. And if the lifestyle factors that comes with renting are the ones that make you happy, you need to rent. Ignore what anybody, your dad, your grandpa, the internet, Forbes.com, whatever, tells you about buying a house. All the things they are saying is true, but you need to make your time here happy. And if renting makes you happy, don't worry about, boomer logic from 1962. And don't worry about, what your grandparents did. And don't worry about what your kids are doing. If you want to rent, you rent. And there should not be any excuses made because there's nothing wrong with it at all. On the other hand, buying a house without all the cultural baggage does affect you, or most people, I'll say, in a certain way. I have just a regular house, it's like a, 1,600 square foot tri-level or something like that. Nothing fancy at all. But every once in a while, I'll pull in my driveway, I'll just be sitting on my couch and I look around and I'm like, damn, I own a house. This is my house. Obviously I have a mortgage, I'm purchasing a house. But I sit there and I'm like, this is my spot. I'll go out on my deck and I'll be like, this is my yard. You know what I think I'm going to do one day? I think I'm going to put a little sunroom right here and build a flat deck and then put in a pool or whatever crazy dreams I have. But the point is that it's mine. And not in a selfish way, like mine, not yours, but look what I did. Look at what I brought into my life. Look at, the decisions I made, whatever horrible decisions I've made in the past, and there have been some. This is my house. I bought this. I did this. And I don't know, it's like the American pioneer spirit, or I can't even quite put, it might be evolutionary. It might go back, 100,000 years, but there is something satisfying for most people about owning a home. And that's important too. And not that it's so important that it should pressure you to spend more than 1/3 of your income on a house, which you should not do that. Not so much that you should take money out of your 401k for down payment. You shouldn't do that either. But if it is something that's important to you to have that stability, to put that mark on the map and be like, that's my mark, that is something you should definitely pursue, even if you are somewhat intimidated by the process or not sure. If you're on the fence, there is a psychologically healthy feeling for most people about owning a home and being like, I did this. This is my spot. So that's not something that should be taken lightly. So, we talked about lifestyle stuff, super, super important in terms of how you want to live your life. Because you only got one you want to make happy. So renting, buying, downtown, rural, whatever you want, you need to make choices based on what's going to make you happy. There's the psychology part of it that we just talked about. No stigma in renting. I think it's totally fine. It's awesome for a lot of people. But, there's something satisfying for a lot of people also about, having your spot. And then there's the money that we talked about, which is what gets all the focus. But like I said, I think what makes the decision intimidating and confusing for a lot of people doesn't have anything to do with the money. I could sit down with you. We can do a bunch of math. And where are you looking? And this is what's renting. And this is what's for sale. And here's good down payment. We can do all that. That's easy. We could do that in less than an hour. What you need to focus on are the lifestyle issues and the psychology. Those are the things that are truly going to help you to make the right decision in terms of rent versus buy. So, if you want more information, if you want to talk about those things, if you're interested in different locations, like I said, a downtown Belleville rental, maybe you could buy something down there, there's all kinds of different things. Give me a call, text me anytime, 219-765-2062. You can send me an email if you prefer, HS by Erica. Stands for Home Sales by Erica, ERICA, @gmail.com. You can comment on this video if you have questions, if you think I'm crazy, like I don't even care, or if you want a question answered, next week's installment or down the road, let me know. I'm happy to put some research into you to give you a good idea of what it is that would work best for your situation. So renting versus buying, it's a big thing, but it doesn't have to be as long as you're listening, what's inside you. Again, happy to help. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.